All right, we are on air. It is Thursday, March 5th, and we're doing a design meeting for Backdrop CMS where we're going to just check in on the design tasks that we're working on for Backdrop. We've got a couple of exciting items on the mental agenda today, even though they aren't actually on the physical agenda. Hopefully we'll get to them at the end. What we're working on, since Backdrop, short term, its audience is to compete with the Drupal 7 audience. Longer term, this product has to be moving a little bit down market into the WordPress market. In order to do a really fair competition against WordPress, we need to do things like improve our overall design, the ability for people to design the software with custom designs, and also the user interface and user experience using it. So we've got some tough roads ahead of us in terms of taking the Drupal product, which traditionally wasn't very strong in those areas, and solving these problems for Backdrop. So what we're working on right now, we have BackdropCMS.org, our flagship website. We have ported it from Drupal 7 to Backdrop, and it is currently undergoing a design review. And so that, I think, is something Darius is working right now. I'm just typing this to him since he's unable to make the chat. And I think we've got tickets against that site already in the issue queue, and we should be pretty close on launching that. I think we might even be close enough that we can launch that like today or tomorrow, and then any design feedback we get on it we can just push as they're ready. So I don't think that the design review is necessarily a block of the release of the new site, but it would be good just to get a designer eye on that site and say, oh, you guys forgot something over here, or we should think about designing this thing differently. But I think that's pretty much done. And so the next steps for that website, backdropcms.org, are to implement mobile navigation. So we have designs for mobile navigation, but we haven't actually implemented it because we didn't want to implement it on the Drupal 7 version of the site, and then we just ported the current theme to Backdrop. So it still hasn't been implemented yet. We can do that after launch. And then we also want to start a design phase for the node add page because we want people to be able to add nodes that represent projects, modules, themes, or layouts for Backdrop so that we can have a listing of modules, themes, and layouts on backdropcms.org. So we need to design the node add page for that, we need to design the node view page for that, and we need to design the listing page for that. So the next feature we're planning on pushing on the site is listings of projects that people can download for Backdrop, and so that process needs to be designed a little bit along the way. And then, of course, once we have those designs finalized, they need to be implemented as well. So that's kind of what's on our plate for our primary website. Other things we're working on right now, we have Backdrop the product, and this is probably the most exciting thing, and we're getting the most traction on it, which is taking our administrative style guide, which we've been working on pretty hard for the last few months, and implementing it as pull requests against Backdrop the product. And we have a couple of blocking design feedback issues that we need resolved. And then we have a bunch of implementation tasks that we just need people to work on. I know we've had a bunch of progress from Wes. You have a pull request I think is in the queue. I did two that it's kind of funny when you start implementing them, you think you know how they're going to go, and then you look how it's going, and you go, oh, that's not what I thought was going to happen too. So I ran into that twice where it was like, oh, I shouldn't be changing like the way Bartik renders tables. I should only be doing 7. So there's some stuff like that that you don't find out until you're in the middle of it. And then I think Ronnie's also working on getting our fonts and stuff in there as well. So I saw a comment from him this morning and didn't get a chance to read it, but we'll get there. So I think we're making some progress on that. And anyone else who wants to pick up tasks that change the administrative interface for Backdrop, they're all very nicely broken out. We've got a meta issue. It has a bunch of subtasks. The ones that you can just grab and do are pretty clearly marked. The ones that are blocked are also clearly marked. So what I'm going to be focusing on short term is trying to unblock the ones that are blocked. So that will be taking design feedback from Darius and pushing those changes into the style guide just so that we can get people who want to make changes to Backdrop a source for that design, what those things should be looking like. But yeah, so I think that's where we are on that. And I don't know if you want Wes to talk about your pull request now. I think that might be valuable for other people who are working on it too. If you have questions about which branch you should be filing that against or the general process for getting these changes in, it'd probably be a good time to do that.
Sure, yeah. And it looks like you and Aight actually looked at this already, and I hadn't received or saw the email, I guess. Um, so yeah, so I was wondering, what do I PR against? So I have my fork, which I did all my changes on, did a PR against Backdrop 1.x. Looks like that's the right branch, so that was cool. And then let's see, what other questions did I have? I don't even remember now. Oh yeah, who do I sign the pull request to? Like, do we have a process for other people that'll just be like, yeah, I'm available for pull requests, or like, do we just
Yeah,
kind
I
of leave
think
it out
that
there and see who
the
grabs
way
it?
the GitHub issue queue works with assigning things is really tricky. Like most people won't have access to actually assign things to other people.
Okay,
And I think I'm not even sure you can assign things to yourself unless you have a certain level of permissions. So what we've
gotcha.
been doing in general is just you create the pull request, and Nate is the only one who's currently got the like reviewer hat on.
Okay,
If you need a review from someone and Nate's busy, you can ping anyone to review it. But I don't think we
okay,
can use the assignment thing to do that just because of the way the permissions work.
gotcha.
So what you'll probably notice is that Nate and I get emails from these things, and we're likely to notice it first because we're pretty on top of those incoming messages. And so Nate will see it right away and be like, "Yeah, it's a pull request," and he'll look at it and he'll do a cursory review. And then if I see it, I can like come away in my 2 cents too. But you're more likely to get a response from Nate first. And then if there's something where you've submitted a pull request and you don't hear anything, that's also likely. Like we're both busy and whatever. You feel free to ping anyone who you think might be able to do a good review. So if it's you're working with Ronnie and he's available, you're like, hey, can you just look at this and make sure I did this right or whatever.
Hmm.
It's completely fine to hand those things back and forth. And I think
Cool.
either one of you should be able to add a tag for needs work or ready to be committed, depending on the status of that pull request. And you can
Cool.
use that internally for the two of you. Or what I often do is I'll tag it ready to be committed because I know that'll set off a little alarm bell in Nate's mind when he sees that. He's going to want to see that one first because he thinks he can merge it right away. So that's kind of like a Nate hasn't looked at this issue for a month. I'm going to mark it RTBC thing that I use internally. I think most of the time you shouldn't need to worry about that. I'm also pretty good, or Nate and I guess, are both pretty good about checking the pull request list as opposed to the issue list. And so if there are
Right.
pull requests sitting there, those are likely to get looked at more often than issues, just because if they're ready, we want to get them in. If they're not ready, we want to make sure they're marked as not ready so the people who worked on them can work on them some more.
Cool.
So we do periodically be like, Nate, are you busy? Should I go through this pull request queue? And he goes, yes. And then I go and mark stuff like this is actually for Nate and this is not ready yet. So I think, depending on what we end up setting up with our automated issue handling with GitHub hooks, we're going to try and have some of these tags added automatically too. Like if you create a pull
Okay.
request and the tests fail, we want to have it
Mm.
automatically like marked as needs work. And if it, I don't know, there's like some other stuff where we want to tag the issue that's associated with it, like pull request needs work or has pull request or whatever. When a pull request mentions an issue, we just haven't implemented any of the GitHub hooks that do all that stuff yet. So I think
Cool.
like for now, just use your best judgment in terms of assignments and tags and stuff, and what you have the ability to do, feel free to do, and we'll kind of figure it out as we go.
Cool. There is one thing that Nate brought up, a little off topic. Um, it was Mobilefirst CSS. So I have one media query, and since we support IE8 and up, I think IE8, yeah, IE9 supports media queries. IE8 does not. So if we're doing Mobilefirst CSS, we have to make sure there's either a polyfill or like a modernizer to give us a class to style off of to make sure that the crap old browsers will actually get the right default styles because they're going to be desktop. Since I only added one, I just did max width, meaning only mobile cares about this, instead of setting the default and then saying 600 and up, which would be mobile firsty. So I didn't know if we wanted to be like, yeah, let's go ahead and start making 7 mobile first ready, because I think unless it's changed from Drupal, which I haven't looked at that much in Backdrop, it's very desktop-y and not mobile friendly
Yeah, all of
at
Backdrop's
all.
layouts are mobile first, and I think
Okay.
right now all of the style and core is mobile first, so it'd probably be easier to keep doing everything mobile first and make sure we get that polyfill in there or whatever we need to make IE work.
Let's do that.
And I think that's probably also good going forward, because at some point in Backdrop 2 or so we may drop support for IE8, and it would be good to not have to rewrite all of our CSS at that point. Where if we can just remove a polyfill, I think that would be easier going forward.
Cool. Like it.
So can you then create an issue for that IE8 backwards compatibility or cross compatibility or whatever it is to make sure that that works? Because I'm not sure that works now. I know we have. I don't think we have Modernizer. Nate, do you know if there's anything in there now that would make that work?
Nope, I don't think there is. On the other hand, I'm not too bent out of shape about that. Like we say that we support IE8, and we do. It just so happens that you get the mobile experience on IE8 basically. I mean, you get the mobile layout. That if our CSS is actually mobile first, then that's just what you get. So I'm not really that even upset about that, actually. I think that still qualifies as a reasonable level of support. And at least in the case of 7, like our administration theme, like it's like how many of your administrators are running IE8? It seems like that was exceptionally unusual.
Yes, agreed.
So I think
I mean, like the administration theme is used for content editing, and I feel like content creators are the most likely people to be like stuck in some office on some software they can't change.
I think other than banks or like really specific sectors, maybe nonprofits, yeah, it's probably not going to be an issue, because I was just in the corporate world and everyone is upgrading to 7, which I think starts at 9 or 9, I think. I'd have to check, but yeah, I think
can
in
we
my experience,
create an issue and see how much work it would be to put in a polyfill and try and actually support IE8? Because I feel like if we're not going to really support IE8, we shouldn't support IE8 at all. Like if it's like, oh, you can't edit a node, you can't administer a backdrop, like is that really supporting?
Well, no. What we're saying is that if it's mobile first, then you simply get the mobile display on IE8. So
yeah, but that's not the same thing as.
Would putting Modernizer in the JavaScript fix that?
That's why I just want to know how much work it is.
It doesn't fix it.
It's trivial. We should just do it.
It doesn't fix it. What it does is it gives you something to say, oh, this doesn't have media queries, therefore I have this trigger I can style off of. So in my case, I did, such and such selector, clear both, and I put it in a media query. And so I'd do that, and then I would also do, no media
like a body
queries
class or something?
Selector thing. Huh?
Where does the selector go? Is it like on the body
HTML.
tag? On the HTML tag.
Yep. So even higher than that.
It's a little messy. It almost seems like, we would need, or we would want, an IE8 specific style sheet that would target that class and everything inside of it. That would be kind of an exact copy of everything that's in our media queries.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it'd be a lot of work.
Yeah.
We need to do that for every one of our layouts.
It's kind of a hairball when you cut it.
Yeah. Okay. Let's.
So I'll make an issue. We can talk about it.
Yeah, I think I'll make an issue. We can talk about it in the issue. I think it would be good just to have the information, have the option, know what we're facing. But I just don't feel like saying IE8 gets the mobile experience is actually supporting IE8.
That's we call it partial support.
Yeah. I think we should be clear about that too. Like if we're going to say it's only partially supported, we should just say that. Be like partially supported. Okay. Other things we're working on. Anyone who has actually, before I move on, was there anything else we wanted to talk about that came up in the pull request you made? Was which version we should write a pull request against, which is 1.x, and how should we handle media queries, which is mobile first, and nothing else came up that I can think of.
Aight did bring up where the CSS coding guidelines were, which I didn't find. I didn't think to check API dot. I forget what it is. So that was a good pointer too that I did not find myself.
Yeah, we put all of our developer documentation, which is both like front end dev docs and back end, on the API site. And we used to have coding standards on the primary site, but we decided to make that a little different. So the backdropcms.org site will now have like site builder guides on it, and then coding stuff, any kind of code will end up on the API site. So we do have coding standards there for JavaScript, HTML, PHP, CSS, all that stuff.
So where I went to find it was the main site handbook. And is there a link to
there
the API?
There used to be a link. We disabled it. Now the link just says developer documentation, and it'll take you to the API site. But we could put back,
okay.
We could put back the other links if we wanted to. We just ended up building out the rest of the handbook, and it started to look overwhelming. And we've got 5 links here to API site. We should just make one.
Yeah, that's a good place to put it. I was just skimming and didn't find it.
Okay.
And it was like one little thing.
Yeah. We'll keep it in mind. It might be good to have more specific direction from that site. Okay, so then other things we're working on for the Backdrop the product is we would eventually like to get a new front-end theme into Backdrop, preferably one that's a little bit generic and super versatile, and also looks a little bit modern. So we're thinking kind of along the lines of something bootstrappy, where it's a blank slate, but it has some kind of a little bit of style into it, just a little hint, so that people who install Backdrop have something that they can launch a site with. I feel like a lot of people don't want to launch with Bartik just because it feels so much like Drupal. It would be good to have something a little bit more white label-y, that if you want to just build a site and launch without having to install another theme, there was something in core that would meet that need. The way we're approaching getting this new front-end theme into core is by asking people to build contrib themes for Backdrop that meet these needs. We already have one. Radix is a theme that worked in Drupal 7. There's a Drupal 7 version of it. There's also a bunch of layouts that go with it. And we have a version for Backdrop. It was, I think, our first theme that was made, or first contrib theme that was made for Backdrop, which is great. But I think if we're going to be putting a new front-end theme into core, we want to have a couple to compare. So we'll say, you know, Radix versus Bootstrap versus, you know, who knows, whatever else someone comes up with. And we'll look at them and say, you know, pros and cons of approaches of these themes, pros and cons of aesthetics of these themes, and try and figure out which one is best. So if anyone has design talent or theme talent and wants to play with Backdrop, creating a new front-end theme that's nice and generic and would work on lots of different kinds of sites is a great place for you to start. So that's what we're looking at for Backdrop the product. We also have a ton of issues on GitHub that are tagged with audience design. So if you want to help us design, for example, a new field UI or a new layout drag and drop interface, like we've got a bunch of stuff that we know needs work, and we've tagged the issues appropriately. And as new issues come up that we think also need designer feedback or user interface experience, we will tag those accordingly too. So if you want to work on stuff that's not maybe creating a whole theme, but writing a small pull request, there are smaller chunks of work that need to be done in the design area as well. Let's see, other things we're working on. We have the API website for Backdrop, api.backdropcms.org. It is functioning very well right now, so we're not in a huge hurry to make any changes there. We've got other things that are higher priority, but we do want to take the front-end theme from backdropcms.org and put it on the API site and see if we can get similar branding across our two sites. The API site right now is running a version of Bartik, which looks good, works good, but it doesn't adhere to our brand guidelines. It's got wrong fonts and colors and stuff. And so if we can just swap the front-end font from our primary site, or front-end theme from our primary site onto the API site, and make some minor design adjustments to make sure that it works for the content that's on the API site, I think that would be a big win. But again, that's less of a priority than some of the other things we're working on, like adding new features to be able to add module themes and layouts to our primary site. So if somebody wanted to grab that, tackle that for us, that would be pretty cool. We've got all of the repositories on GitHub in public if you wanted to steal them and play with those. Otherwise, we'll just do it when we get to it, but nothing super urgent there for the API site. We also have, let's see, a tag on the GitHub issue queue for user experience related issues, similar to how we have design related issues. And so if you're particularly interested in user interfaces, but not design so much, but more user interaction, we've got a whole subset of those issues too. These sometimes involve little things like terminology updates, making sure that we use the same words like edit consistently through core instead of using configure when we mean edit or edit when we configure, stuff like that. And there's a bunch of kind of little novice tasks about changing terminology. There's a bunch of really major tasks about redesigning interfaces. But I think all of these little things put together, little things and big things, is what's going to make Backdrop's experience start to stand out above Drupal. So I'm really glad that we're thinking about that. And we do have a start on human interface guidelines for how people should be interacting with Backdrop the software. There's a GitHub repository under Backdrop Ops where one of our contributors started creating some documentation, and I think that's going to be super useful for us going forward too, just to have definitions of the kind of interaction elements we have. Like, this is a drop button, and this is when it should be used. And then not only can core look at the guidelines and say, oh, we're using drop buttons in the wrong places, we should fix that, but I think it'll give Contrib a really good idea of how to build user interfaces for Backdrop too, or it's like, oh, obviously I should be using a select list and not a drop button, or whatever problem space they're facing, they'll have a nice clear solution as to which elements they should be putting into it. So I think getting that finished would be great. If we have anyone who is super interested in how people interact with software and want to contribute some time to that, but maybe don't feel like they can write code, that's a great place to jump in. You can just kind of study what we have and start drafting stuff up, and we'll do a review of it at some point and say, we forgot something, or we should change the way this wording is, or however it is. So it's a good place for people who are interested in kind of the theoretical people plus computers space, but maybe not so interested in writing code, to have a place to kind of jump in and contribute as well. We also have a set of Backdrop brand guidelines, which I think is less urgent for us to worry about right now because most of the things that have our branding, like our primary website, are kind of done. But we do have a specific set of colors and fonts, a logo, and there's a lot of information about usage of our logo and our dragon on our Proskit page, which I think is a pretty good place for that. Let's see. There's something else that I think that we need to talk about today, which is the most pressing thing, which is we have South by Southwest as a conference is coming up. One of our very loud, supportive followers is Doug Van, and he's going to be doing training at South by Southwest on Drupal. He's also, a big Backdrop supporter and wants to tell a lot of people about Backdrop, and he asked if we could create some T-shirts for him and have the T-shirts ready to ship to South by Southwest so that he could hand them out there for people who are interested in them. And the week after South by Southwest, there's a conference in Chicago called MidCamp. And so what we thought we would do is order a batch of about 50 T-shirts and have them all sent to Doug Van for South by Southwest. He'll give half of them away there, and he'll bring the other half directly from South by Southwest to MidCamp. Nate and I will be at MidCamp. We're sponsoring one of the sprint rooms there. Yay. And we'll be able to hand out some T-shirts at that event too. And so we figured for this first run of T-shirts, we would just do something fairly simple. One-sided T-shirt, maybe with a dragon on it, maybe with a, something like, Backdrop CMS, try it, you might like it, like some kind of really simple wording that would be kind of, just the dragon, so people doesn't necessarily overwhelmed by the logo, but then just have some kind of cute little thing that would make people want to wear the T-shirt even outside of Drupal functions. So the dragon's pretty cute. People will like that anyway. And then we can see how the first T-shirt goes over and make more T-shirts based on the original design later, depending on our budget. Doug has very generously offered a couple of $100 to go towards the first pressing of the T-shirts, which I think is fabulous. But he did specifically ask that we mention that we were having these T-shirts printed now, and say if anybody wanted a T-shirt, we could increase the quantity of shirts in that order and possibly even mail out the shirts to different people depending on where you are. So the first order we were going to place was there was something like $15 per shirt. So if you wanted to pay $20 per shirt, we could ship them, because that would include like priority mail shipping. And so he even offered to do all of the shipping for us, which is fabulous. So if we have anyone who's watching this meeting either now or later, and they're like, I need a Backdrop T-shirt, I'll pay you $20, here's my information, go ahead and contact us. I would say either use the contact form on our website, or mention something in IRC, tell someone you want a shirt, just so that we know we can increase that count, and we can worry about collecting shipping information later. We just need to get the order out in the next 2 days, I think. So let us know really soon if you want a shirt. And then, of course, we will be ordering more later once we have, lined up some budget and figured out how to do this for real. But we are kind of in a hurry just for South by Southwest. So I think that's super exciting. I think Darius had also volunteered for the dragon shirt design, which I think is really great. We just need to figure out what we want on the shirt. So, Nate, I don't know if you have any thoughts about language or imagery or anything like that. We are limited to 2 colors, but that's, I think, the only limitation we have.
Yeah, we'll just need to talk about that with Darius, I think. I don't have any explicit ideas at this point. Yeah. Are you asking Darius right now, Jen?
Yeah. I told him I would type in the meeting stuff that was relevant to him, so I said T-shirt design. And I said we can talk about it later.
Yeah, we also have the opportunity, our illustrator that did all of our dragon illustrations, like we could potentially reach out to him as well and have him do a T-shirt specific dragon, as well as just getting some additional illustrations. But we'll need to check if he is even available.
Yeah, I feel like trying to get someone else involved in 2 days is not realistic.
Oh, yeah, that's not realistic. Maybe next time.
Yeah, I think that if we wanted to do, like, if we had, when we do a drop camp, it might be good to have like a bigger run of T-shirts done, and we'll have enough time to be able to, hire someone to do a design specific for a T-shirt. We can get new dragons, we can do whatever we want. But I think for 2 days we should just like take some of the imagery we already have and just like stick it on a shirt.
Yeah.
And we've got some cute stuff too. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, for 2 days, I mean, I know we were talking about doing something that had like more subtle branding, but just was like a nice T-shirt that was a little bit more subtle about its about the brand behind it. But on that short notice, we might just do like a classic logo T-shirt, just logo, name, that's it, which would be for a different audience, but could still work on such a short notice.
For this first one, just the logo?
Yeah, just the logo.
Okay. That could work. That's easier too.
Yep.
And we could do one color, which would be cheaper, so we can get more shirts.
Yep. Yeah, just white. White on a dark color.
White on dark, right? With a square cutout and then white ink.
Yep. I mean, we do have a one-color logo.
So apparently Darius can hear us, even though he can't see us. So let's see what he thinks. Yeah, he says that's no problem.
Yeah.
I think that's good too, especially given our timeline.
Okay. Awesome.
Okay. It sounds like a plan. And then the next time we do T-shirts, we'll do dragon shirts, and we can put cute language on it and whatever else. Okay, so let's see. Anything else that we should talk about today? I had another thing too, like on the. I'm not sure we necessarily need to talk about this in this meeting, but on the style guide review thing, we got a bunch of really great feedback from people. That was feedback on things that we hadn't actually styled. And I think maybe what we should do is for things that we haven't even thought about yet, just postpone all of that and get all the stuff we have thought about in. So things like, putting a hover effect on table rows and stuff, we can add all of that later as needed. But there's some stuff that shouldn't actually be blocking our implementation issues. Like we should just say, yes, we need that, create another issue, and it's not related to whatever, and then we can go through the process of designing it, getting in style, putting it in, just so that we end up unblocked on more issues. I know right now we don't have a ton of implementation happening, but I feel like it's about to happen, and it would be great if people didn't get really excited and then get stuck because something's blocked, like everything left is blocked. So I'm going to go through that today and try and see what we can unblock just by moving an item or two to another issue, or postponing it until 1.2 or something instead of 1.1. But yeah, so that's something I was thinking about for style guide stuff. Is there anything else we need to talk about design related? I feel like there's been a ton of stuff that's been happening lately that's not in this agenda, but I don't. I don't know if it's just my excitement that makes it seem like it's more different things, but it's actually just like a lot of work happening on a few things.
One thing that was really exciting and that unblocked a bunch of stuff in the style guide was that we finally figured out what to do about an icon font versus SVGs. So announcement-wise, what we decided to do ultimately was for the initial implementation of the updated administration theme, for things like icons that are in the messages area and things like that, we looked at using an icon font pretty extensively, but found that it basically is not possible to have an accessible icon font without modifying the markup. It's totally like we were leaning really heavily towards an icon font until we found out that it literally, at this point in time, requires modifying the markup, and that's not something that we want to get into. And actually, from an implementation standpoint, like it might not be possible for us to go through and modify the markup of all of core just to add icons. So for the time being, for all of our vector background image or vector icons, we're going to be looking at using SVGs with ping fallbacks for the time being. So that unblocked all kinds of things because we've got icons throughout a lot of the administration theme, and that's what we're going to be doing for all of those for this at least Backdrop 1.x.
So Wes, I know you had posted in one of your issues that you were working on some kind of clever like library tool that would make us able to export SVGs and pings from the Font Awesome icon font, or maybe there's even libraries out there that already do that kind of thing. But if we could find some way to document that process, so like whatever it is you decide to do, document that process so that we can you know, later on when we're like, oh, we need to add an icon, there's a recipe for someone to say this is where you get the images from.
Yeah, I was thinking it almost feels like just like a little GitHub project I could just throw out there. It's not even necessarily Backdrop specific. It's just here's a SVG and PNG version of Font Awesome.
Yeah.
And it'll be SCSS and or SAS and a Photoshop script, so it's not dynamic. It requires manual work, but it's not. It's just like shoving things through a couple scripts.
Yeah, there's a website that already does this. I looked it up once.
Okay.
You basically you just choose the font you want, and they've got every font already. You just check, get these icons. You say what color you want it in and what size you want it to be, and then you hit export, and it makes SVGs and pings.
Nice.
Here it says Noun Project does that. Does the Noun Project have all of the icons from icon font? I'm not sure what the time delay is on asking him questions, but
To use icon font, you have to have an I tag. So I was wondering, is there a way to rewrite the results of a view to add the custom like I tag, and then you could just put the link in a block, and then have it show up?
So yeah, I mean, in Contrib you can do whatever you want for adding, you know, markup wherever you can rewrite views. You can theme override. You can do whatever you need. But in core we decided we're not going to change markup. So we won't be adding I tags or span tags or any of the inline elements that icon fonts require to be accessible. So what we're trying to do is just generate images based on the icon font. So we chose a Font Awesome as our like source of like this is what everything should look like, and then what we're going to do is export like, you know, static images, SVGs and pings from that font. So the font is just our design resource basically, and we're just snipping out the images one at a time and including only the images we actually are using in core. So rather than shipping with the entire icon font or a modified font, we're going to be like, here's the 8 images we're using, so then we'll have 16, you know, 8 pings and 8 SVGs, and we'll just put them in as background images. So it looks like the Noun project does not have the images from Font Awesome, but it does have a lot of images that'll let you export. But yeah, I mean, I don't remember the site that we were looking at before that actually will let you say, like, give me Font Awesome icons in white, and then print, and then like let you download the images. Yeah, I think there's one out there.
I found a GitHub project where someone did exactly what I was thinking of doing.
Okay, well there we go.
This has been done for sure. I think we just need to work what the tool is. And I did this once already, and so I just need to dig up where it came from.
There it is. Nice. Okay, so maybe, yeah, I think I mentioned this before, like we could write up a blog post somewhere or some kind of documentation page that's like, this is our image source is Font Awesome. This is how you get actual images out of iPhone font. And then we can reference that from any issue currently that requires an icon, like status messages or what have you. And then we could also use that as a reference in the future. So it's like, hey, you know, we're going to add a home icon, and this is how you get it, or whatever it is that we're working on.
Here it is. It's Fontella. That's the library or the website that does it.
Really? Fontella lets you create modified fonts, but I didn't know they also let you grab files.
You can check all of the different icons you want, and then you can download web font, but you can configure it to also include SVG and PNG versions.
Huh. Crazy. Okay. All right, let's see. Is there anything else we need to talk about this week or otherwise?
I don't think so. I think we need to hop off so we can get ready for the next phone call, which is in 8 minutes. So.
All right. So we will mention the T-shirts again in the next phone call. So if anyone wants a Backdrop T-shirt, let us know. Otherwise, we will meet again in 2 weeks and check in on where we're doing. We should have a new live site by then. So exciting progress. Well, thanks guys for joining, and we will see you in IRC in the issue queue.
Okay. Thanks so much for joining, guys. Bye-bye.